So this was all for theatrics. They were doing a stream together. They're doing a role play. Neveah was acting like little Victor, and Blueface was telling little Victor about Neveah. Things did get real when it seemed that Blueface shared how he was really feeling about some of Neveah's actions. She didn't take too kindly to him calling Neveah the B word, and you could tell, him saying that she was calling him too much.
This wasn't supposed to happen on camera. This wasn't supposed to leak. And this definitely wasn't supposed to turn into another chapter of family chaos that makes the Kardashians look like a group though. Raby's success story, because the moment Neveah allegedly put hands on Blueface, everything shifted. And when Karlissa found out, it wasn't disappointment, it wasn't shock, it was fury. The kind of fury that doesn't ask questions first, it demands answers loudly. What looked like a quick flash of disrespect instantly became a family war zone. Lines were drawn, sides were picked, and suddenly, the internet was watching a private family fracture in real time. People froze mid-scroll because this wasn't just drama, this was layered. Family dynamics, power struggles, boundaries crossed, and a matriarch who clearly felt someone stepped way out of line. Because when Karlissa goes off, she doesn't whisper behind the scenes. She detonates the room, and the wildest part, this wasn't just about a slap, it was about control, respect, and a pattern that's been simmering under the surface for way too long. So the question isn't who slapped who, the question is why. This moment blew everything wide open. This situation didn't start with a slap. It started with tension that had been fermenting so long it practically had an expiration date. The slap was just the moment everything spilled out in public, forcing everyone to stop pretending this family dynamic was anything close to normal. Because when Neveah allegedly put hands on Blueface, it wasn't just shocking, it was revealing. And when Karlissa found out, her reaction wasn't confusion or disbelief, it was rage. The kind of rage that comes from watching a situation spiral for months and finally realizing it crossed a line you can't walk back from. Let's be real. This family has never been quiet. Arguments don't stay private. Feelings don't stay contained. Everything leaks, escalates, and turns into content whether anyone asked for it or not. Chaos has always been part of the atmosphere, but physical disrespect, that hits different. Karlissa didn't see this as drama. She saw it as a boundary violation. And for someone who already feels like she's been holding things together with duct tape and stubborn loyalty, that slap was the moment restraint ran out. What shocked people wasn't just her anger, it was how immediate and decisive it felt. There was no let me hear both sides, no soft phrasing, no waiting for the internet to decide what was acceptable. Karlissa went straight into protection mode, like someone who decided enough is enough and doesn't care who's offended by it, and the sarcasm writes itself. Because in a world where yelling is normal and public embarrassment is routine, the one thing that triggered absolute fury was someone crossing into physical territory. Suddenly, the same chaos that's been tolerated for years became unacceptable overnight. Fans immediately started connecting dots. Old arguments resurfaced. Clips of past confrontations were replayed with new context. Moments that once felt like random blow-ups now look like warning signs no one took seriously because messiness made better entertainment. Karlissa's anger wasn't just about that one moment. It felt cumulative, like the slap was the final straw stacked on top of disrespect, instability, and long-standing friction that never truly got resolved. People online split fast. One group argued that in an environment built on constant conflict, something like this was inevitable. Another group said nothing excuses putting hands on someone, especially when family dynamics are already volatile. Karlissa made it clear which side she was on. There was no gray area. For her, physical contact wasn't drama, it was a deal breaker. And that's what made her reaction so jarring. Because in a family where nearly everything gets excused, explained away, or laughed off, This was one line she refused to let slide. The internet, of course, did what it always does: it sensationalized. Clips were looped, commentary channels went live, memes started circulating faster than facts. But underneath the jokes was a real discomfort, because once things turn physical, the story stops being entertaining and starts being unsettling. Karlissa's response reframed the entire situation. This wasn't petty chaos anymore. This was a matriarch stepping in and saying the behavior had gone too far. And when someone who's been surrounded by dysfunction suddenly draws a hard boundary, it shakes everyone involved. What made this moment explode was how symbolic it felt. The slap wasn't just an action, it represented how far the family dynamic had drifted. When respect erodes long enough, something always snaps. Karlissa's fury didn't come from shock, it came from recognition. Like she'd seen this moment coming and hated that it finally arrived, fans started asking uncomfortable questions. Why did things keep escalating instead of de-escalating? Why did conflict always have to reach extremes before anyone intervened? Why did it take something physical for boundaries to suddenly matter? And here's the part nobody wanted to say out loud: chaos had been normalized for so long that people forgot what normal even looked like. Karlissa wasn't reacting to one incident. She was reacting to a pattern, a cycle of disrespect, confrontation, and escalation that kept repeating because nobody ever shut it down completely. Her anger carried authority. Not internet outrage, not performative fury, but the kind of frustration that comes from feeling responsible for a situation that keeps slipping out of control. That's why her reaction landed heavier than expected. It wasn't loud for attention. It was loud because she meant it. By the end of the first wave, it was obvious this wasn't going to blow over quietly. Too many feelings were exposed, too many lines were crossed, and too many people were forced to pick a side they didn't want to be on. The slap might have been brief, but the consequences were already stretching far beyond that moment, because once physical boundaries get crossed, nothing goes back to normal. It only moves forward, fractured. Once Karlissa's reaction hit the public, the situation didn't simmer down, it combusted. The internet didn't just react. It chose chaos. Timelines flooded, comment sections turned feral, and suddenly everyone had an opinion about respect, family boundaries, and who crossed the line first. The slap stopped being the headline. Karlissa's fury became the headline. Because when someone who's usually surrounded by non-stop drama suddenly draws a hard boundary, people pay attention, and not politely, aggressively. Memes exploded like confetti at a reunion episode. Gone wrong. Some joked that the situation looked like a reality show scene that skipped the warning label. Others compared it to a soap opera that forgot it was supposed to be scripted. The humor was loud, but the discomfort underneath it was louder. Commentary channels went live back-to-back like emergency broadcasts. Every creator had a take. Some defended Neveah, arguing that an environment soaked in conflict eventually produces physical reactions. Others backed Karlissa, saying there is no universe where putting hands on someone is acceptable, no matter how messy the dynamic already is. And then there was the third group, the quiet watchers. The ones who weren't laughing, the ones who saw this as proof that the situation had officially gone too far. What escalated everything was how fast old footage resurfaced. Past arguments, heated exchanges, moments people once brushed off as just drama were replayed with new eyes. Suddenly, everything looked like build-up. The slap didn't feel random anymore. It felt like the climax of unresolved tension that had been piling up without consequence. Karlissa didn't soften her stance. If anything, she sharpened it. Her reaction carried authority, not internet outrage, but family-level finality, the kind that says, this stops now, whether you like it or not. That tone rattled people, because chaos had been normalized for so long that seeing someone rejected outright felt almost unnatural. Public outrage split clean down the middle. One side said Karlissa was right to shut it down immediately. The other side argued that the environment itself breeds escalation. And no one should be surprised when things turn physical after prolonged emotional warfare. But Even the defenders couldn't ignore one thing. This wasn't funny anymore. The jokes flowed. The tone shifted. Because when physical moments enter a story, the entertainment value drops and the seriousness spikes. Celebrities didn't jump in, but their silence was noticeable. No public support, no commentary, just quiet distance. The kind of distance people create when they don't want to be associated with a situation that's starting to feel dangerous instead of dramatic. Karlissa's anger became symbolic, not just of that one moment, but of years of tension bubbling under the surface. People started asking questions they hadn't before. Why did arguments always escalate instead of resolve? Why did nobody intervene sooner? Why did it take physical contact for boundaries to suddenly matter? The internet started reframing the story. This wasn't about a single action anymore. It was about a pattern. A family dynamic where conflict kept escalating because nobody ever stopped it completely. The slap became a timestamp, a moment everyone would reference going forward. Before the slap, after the slap, and that's when the memes got darker, less playful, more uncomfortable. Because people realized this wasn't just content, it was a fracture. Karlissa didn't engage in back and forth. She didn't argue online. She didn't explain herself. It was about drawing a line she felt should have existed long ago. That's what made the escalation so intense. The chaos finally met resistance. Fans who were used to seeing everything spiral suddenly watched someone refuse to let it continue. Unchecked, and resistance in a chaotic system always causes backlash before it causes order. Some accused Karlissa of overreacting. Others praised her for finally enforcing boundaries. But no one ignored her. The slap itself almost became secondary. The real story was that someone finally said, enough. And once that word enters a narrative built on dysfunction, everything changes. Because now, every future conflict will be measured against this moment. Every argument will be compared. Every escalation will be judged harder. The situation didn't cool off. It matured into something heavier, something that couldn't be undone with jokes or distractions. And by the end of this phase, it was clear the story wasn't over. It had simply shifted gears, because once boundaries are publicly challenged, the aftermath is never quiet. By the time the internet noise started to thin out, the real damage had already set in. Not the loud, headline-grabbing kind, but the quiet kind that rewires relationships permanently. Because once something turns physical, there is no pretending it was just another argument. The rules change, the tone changes, and the people involved don't walk back into the same room the same way again. For Karlissa, this moment became a line in the sand that couldn't be smoothed over with explanations or excuses. Her fury wasn't about winning the internet. It was about control, or more accurately, regaining it in a situation that had clearly spun too far off course. And when someone who's been surrounded by dysfunction finally snaps into authority mode, it sends shockwaves through everyone who benefited from the chaos. Blueface's position shifted instantly. Not publicly canceled, not openly condemned, but subtly isolated. The kind of isolation that doesn't scream but lingers. Suddenly, conversations around him weren't about music or antics. They were about environment, accountability, and whether things had gone unchecked for far too long. The slap followed him like a shadow. Every clip, every mention, every discussion carried that context. Not because people were obsessed with the action itself, but because it symbolized how unstable things had become, and instability is contagious. Relationships around him felt the tension immediately. When a family dynamic fractures publicly, trust becomes scarce. People start choosing words carefully. Movements become cautious. Silence becomes a strategy instead of peace. Neveah, meanwhile, became a lightning rod without ever asking to be one. Her name was now attached to a moment that the internet wouldn't let fade. Whether people defended her or condemned her, she was no longer just a background figure. She was part of a turning point, and turning points don't let go easily. The commentary shifted from blame to consequence. People started asking what happens next. Does the family close ranks? Does distance get enforced? Does this moment finally force real boundaries? Or does everything slide back into chaos once the cameras move on? Karlissa's continued stance suggested something different. This time, there was no backpedaling, no softening, no attempt to downplay what happened. That rigidity signaled permanence, and permanence is terrifying in environments built on flexibility and excuses. What made this fallout heavier than previous scandals was how tired the audience sounded. The jokes were fewer, the takes were sharper, people weren't entertained anymore, they were exhausted. And audience exhaustion changes narratives. Instead of cheering escalation, people started questioning it. Instead of asking who's next, they asked why this keeps happening. That's a dangerous shift for any public saga. The family dynamic, once treated like chaotic entertainment, began to feel uncomfortable to watch. And once viewers feel complicit instead of amused, the entire structure starts to collapse. Blueface didn't lose relevance overnight, but he lost the benefit of the doubt. And that's worse, because relevance can be rebuilt. Trust is harder. Every future argument will now be judged through this lens. Every loud moment will be met with skepticism instead of excitement. The audience has seen what escalation leads to, and they can't unsee it. Karlissa, intentionally or not, forced that realization into the open by refusing to excuse physical behavior. She reframed the entire story from messy to concerning, and concern drains entertainment value fast. Behind the scenes, things don't magically repair after moments like this. Conversations get colder, distance grows, people reassess loyalties, and once reassessment starts, relationships rarely return to their previous form. This wasn't just a reaction, it was a recalibration. The slap may have been brief, but its echo stretched far beyond that moment. It altered how people spoke, how they reacted, and how they interpreted every interaction that followed. And here's the part that makes this story linger. It didn't feel resolved. There was no closure, no apology tour, no clean narrative wrap-up, just tension hanging in the air like humidity before a storm. Because when something forces boundaries into the open, the aftermath isn't loud, it's slow, it's measured, it's uncomfortable. People began to sense this wasn't the end of the saga. It was a pause, the kind that comes before either distance or explosion. Karlissa didn't look like someone interested in continuing the cycle. She looked like someone done negotiating. And when someone reaches that point, the system around them has to adjust or break. The audience is watching differently now, not for shock value, but for signs, for changes, for proof that something actually shifted. And if it didn't, then this moment will be remembered as the warning that nobody fully listened to. Because chaos doesn't usually end with a bang. It ends with people quietly stepping away once they realize the cost is too high. This chapter didn't close with answers. It closed with tension. And tension, in stories like this, always means something else is coming. Now it's your turn, because moments like this don't live in silence. They live in the comments. If you think Karlissa was absolutely right to shut it down the second things went physical, say that with your chest. If you think this was the inevitable result of a family dynamic built on non-stop chaos, say that louder. And if you believe this entire situation proves that messy stops being entertaining once real boundaries get crossed, smash that like button like it owes you money and just blocked your number. Drop your takes below. Was this long overdue? Accountability, or just another chapter in a cycle that refuses to break? And be honest, if this happened in your family, would you step in immediately, or would you pretend it's not your place until it explodes? Hit subscribe right now. Because over here the drama doesn't slow down, it escalates. We don't clap for chaos, we call it out. We don't hype dysfunction, we expose where it cracks. New scandals, new fallout, and new uncomfortable truths drop constantly on this channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update, the behind-the-scenes shifts, or the moment everyone swears they saw it coming after the Damage is done. Because in celebrity families, silence isn't peace. It's a pressure cooker. This is Fame Flaws, where